So our next speaker is Jennifer Olsen, who's the assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science at the University of San Diego. And her presentation is about artificial intelligence for orchestration in the classroom. Thank you, Jennifer, for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction. Just let me share my screen. So as mentioned, I'm going to talk today about orchestration and in the classroom. And this is something that I have been working on since I was at Carnegie Mellon, and then when I went to EPFL, and now that I'm here at the University of San Diego. But today what I really want to do is look across lots of labs and see how they've used this, so we can say, well, what context can we use them going forward? So to begin, what I really want to do is have us all be on the same page about what does orchestration mean. And so in my talk, what I'm going to say is that orchestration, it provides us a lens that expands the focus beyond the individual or group of learners to a wider learning environment. And so what does this really mean? And so it means that we need to attend to how learning technologies fit into our broader educational ecosystems. So a lot of times we're designing them to work one-on-one with a learner, or we're designing them to work with a group of learners, but they're being put in these much larger systems. And so what does that actually look like? And so broadly speaking, orchestration refers to the planning and real-time management of learning that responds to the complexity of learning scenarios with human instructors in the loop. And so the two things I want to highlight there is the real-time management. And so thinking about often orchestration is dealing with what's actually happening during our learning activities, and then the role of the instructor, that we can't forget to kind of have them in that loop and that they are part of this learning process. And so with an orchestration lens, we can consider these points, and we're able to kind of look at that then on not just the focus on an individual learner, but on a network of learners. And so for this, why this is so important is because that orchestration systems aim to support what instructors already do. And so we can see this through the characteristics laid out by Prieto et al. When they really talk about that orchestration can contain the designing and planning of learning activities, the regulation and management, the awareness and assessment, the ability to adapt and be flexible and intervene, and that it really has these teachers as part of it. And so this is something that these are tasks that instructors are already engaged in, but that doesn't mean that it's free of breakdowns. Sometimes they don't have enough resources to be able to do their ideal design. Sometimes they feel like they are missing information and they're not able to put the interventions in place at the right times. And that means the activity doesn't go as well as they want it to in a classroom or in other learning environments. And so that's where we can really step in with our orchestration systems to say, well, how can we augment what instructors are already doing? And so to do this and to build these systems, we need to understand instructors. And this is something where explicitly we need to be able to collaborate with them. And so I think it's nice to look back at the LaTeX framework from Martinez and Maldonado to be able to say, well, what does this process really look like to develop learning analytics to get our stakeholders to participate and be part of this process? And so orchestration systems are a type of learning analytics where we are trying to provide information during these activities. And so we can see how our instructors or our learners can be really part of this whole process. We can start with this problem identification, really understanding where these breakdowns are in the classroom and where they are specific to the ecosystem that we're currently looking at. We can then see when we start to build out these prototypes, how do we build visualizations and how do we provide this information that's going to actually be usable and is going to be available at the right times for our instructors and students. Moving on to kind of the high fidelity prototyping and our pilot studies of thinking about how does this change the behaviors in the classrooms or the other learning environments? And how does it actually interact when we have this in this real environment that is much messier than we ever have in our labs? And then kind of putting it into our classrooms to actually be used. And so for this, we can do this in a lot of different ways of how we can get our instructors involved. So sometimes what we've seen through orchestration literature is that we've been involved by going in and observing classrooms, seeing what's actually happening, seeing how the orchestration is currently taking place. We've also done this through participatory design or co-design sessions of actually developing these together with instructors and with students, and think about how do we use different techniques to elicit what their needs are. And so all of this is really crucial to understand what is needed in the classroom and to have them be part of it. However, this doesn't mean for every ecosystem and every learning environment, we want to start from scratch, right? We want to be able to build off of the trends that we've already seen in orchestration research, but we still need to be able to tailor it to the needs of the ecosystem that we're currently working with, because no teacher is the same, no student is the same. And as we've already kind of seen between the two different talks with writing and mathematics, the support that we're going to need is going to be different across these domains depending on who we're working with. So for this, I want to give an example of how we can start to build off of some orchestration research that we've seen. And so, for example, the support that we can give in orchestration systems, we know can kind of differ between things that are more managerial and things that are more pedagogical. So when I'm talking about managerial, I'm talking about the tasks that take place that are important for making an activity run smoothly, but are not directly tied to student knowledge. So for example, helping to organize resources so that they're all going to be available during an activity is part of orchestration. Thinking about how can we pause an activity to be able to get students' attention so that we can be able to communicate effectively with them. Thinking about how we can transition between different activities and phases in a larger lesson. This doesn't mean that these tasks aren't tied to pedagogical reasons, right? Sometimes we do transitions at different times depending on what's going to be useful for our learners, but they aren't inherently sort of focused on the student's learning process. So on the other hand, we have more of these the pedagogical support that we can provide that supports and focuses on these student learning processes. And so this is thinking about, can we detect when our students are wheel spinning? And are we able to then give help to the proper groups when they need it? Are we able to see when students are unsuccessfully collaborating? And so this is something that Erin talked about with the social robots. Can we kind of step in sometimes if we don't see the best collaboration there and provide some of that support? And so with all of this, then, what I want to do is give a few examples of orchestration systems we have without AI, and then some with AI to see kind of how we can enhance those as we go through. And so across these, orchestration systems can really have these different degrees of support that's provided by the system. And so the first two I'll talk about are more orchestrable tools. And these are thinking about systems that provide the instructor with additional information, with no additional information, but can allow for the flexibility in the design and what happens in the classroom. In other words, you can kind of think about it as when we design activities, sometimes we put them in and then we just hope they go well. But instead, we want to be able to say, can we react to things that are happening and change the activity as we're going through? Mirroring systems then can take this one step further, where we're actually providing information to the user that they're able to reflect back on. But this information doesn't necessarily make any value judgment about it. It's just making the invisible visible to the instructor. And so I want to give two different examples of tools that use these properties. So first, I'm going to highlight TinkerLamp. And TinkerLamp is a tool that supports logistic apprentices. And so we can see this is in a vocational setting, and it allows them to design warehouses and run simulations that check the efficiency of the design that they put in. What the teacher has different cards that they can use. Some of these cards, like in this example, pause the entire activity for the class so that they're able to get their attention. Or they have some cards that after students check in on them, they can flash the card so that the students have been able to reflect on their designs before they just start simulations and are able to have some of that pause and time in between. So what we can see is this technology doesn't make you just plan the activity beforehand, but it allows flexibility to react to what's actually happening in the classroom. And so in TinkerLamp, they found that the system facilitates the teacher's work, makes it easier for them to manage both the class and the learning resources in real time, and it provides more opportunity to reflection for the students, which has led to higher learning outcomes. As a second example, I want to highlight the MT dashboard. And so for this, we can see some of these same orchestrable controls, right? The user is able to start, move to the next phase of the solution, able to kind of pause to get everyone's attention. But something that's added here is that they're able to see the participation of the groups. And so in this case, the MT dashboard is really supporting collaborative concept map development on tabletops. And so because students are collaborating, it can be important to see what this collaboration looks like and how different group members are participating to know which groups they need to go and visit. And so we can see that through these designs. And using this awareness, the instructors were able to identify and spend more time with groups that needed more help. And so with that, we can kind of look at the higher degrees of support. And so where the AI can really get involved. And so for this, we can look at metacognitive tools that provide a comparison between the current state and the desired state. And so showing a difference so that there's some assessment, there's some judgment in what's actually happening. A guiding tool can provide remedial action suggestions that can then be implemented by the instructor. And then finally, in orchestration systems, we also have decision-making tools where it doesn't just make a suggestion for maybe how we can intervene, but it can actually take an action for the instructor. And so now I want to go through 3 examples that kind of use some AI within the classroom. And so for these, we can start by looking at Lumilo. And so this was a tool that was built with a heads-up display for middle school instructors whose students were working on a math intelligent tutoring system. And so because of this, we already have a lot of AI in this technology, but it wasn't always apparent or visible to the instructor. And so something that you could do is through Lumilo, the instructor could see which students were struggling. And so there would be question marks over their head. There could be these virtual hand raises, warning signs when certain students were engaged in wheel spinning or unproductive work. And so what this helps with is the teacher is then able to quickly see who is confused and who needs help because it's providing these alerts and this metacognitive support. It's making kind of this value judgment on which students are stuck. Through this, Lumilo has been shown to be able to better support student learning than without this support. And I know sometimes we think, well, what about the uniqueness of the technology? But it actually, even if the teacher just had kind of this heads-up display on, above that, even though it does help sometimes to have that new technology in the classroom, Lumilo with this orchestration support benefited the student learning even kind of above just having novel technology in the classroom. As a second example, I want to highlight Frog. And so Frog is an orchestration system that supports activities that can flexibly occur in the classroom. And so this Frog was often used in large lectures where when you wanted to put active learning in place, often it was very hard for instructors to even engage with this because it is so difficult to know what's happening when you have 300 students in your classroom and you can't walk around and track all of them. And so we were lucky enough or unlucky enough to be using it in a classroom when the pandemic hit, where it was being used to do some of this active learning at the beginning of classes to set up students for what was happening in that lecture that day. And one of the things that we did was we were able to, on these activities, show the progression of the students as they went through and provide some of these estimates on when we thought there would be completion so that the teachers could allow their students to have time to engage with these activities without cutting them too short, but also without students getting bored and pulling back once they finished, because they would actually know where their students were in the activities. It really helped the transition when things moved from in-person to online, where kind of the benefits of having this in place was that it didn't change any of the learning outcomes from using these activities. They had been used in many years before in the same class, and being able to smoothly do these same activities online as in person allowed students to still be able to engage in this, and it didn't take any more time for setup or anything because the instructors had this information and could do some of this prediction. And finally, I want to highlight FACT. which supports elementary school mathematics activities. And so here, again, FACT, something that it does is it presents classroom instructors with real-time alerts, recommending which students need help and what to help them with. And so FACT is able to support instructors by formulating and enacting instructional responses. So for example, it can auto-suggest prompts that the instructor can use to broadcast to particular groups of students or the entire class. And so it has this AI element that's able to help the instructor better do a lot of this orchestration and communicate with their students. So with these systems, we can see that AI has been successful in making orchestration be able to be in the classroom. And we've seen these, but that doesn't mean there aren't kind of open questions with what we're going to do with orchestration. And so I want to highlight 4 of those that we had as we were kind of looking through all of these different systems. And so the first is, how should tasks be distributed among human instructors, AI agents, and learners in given learning contexts and scenarios? So again, think about what ecosystem are we putting this in? And that's again, thinking about this orchestration lens that we're thinking about the larger picture. Who should ultimately be accountable for particular instructional decision and design choices? And so this again comes up a lot with those ethics, coming back to if a student comes up to you about their grade, it's always the instructor who has to be able to answer those, but ultimately, should the instructor always be accountable, or can we spread that information across the AI or other actors within the learning system? Third, how can co-orchestration systems be designed to support instructors with different levels of experience and expertise? So again, thinking about not all teachers are coming in at the same level. They've taught different things. They might need different systems. They might need different support or visualizations. And then finally, how should the distribution of orchestration tasks across instructors, learners, and AI systems shift based on learner age groups, self-regulated learning skills, or cultural contexts? So again, thinking about this larger ecosystem, you're not going to necessarily design the same tool for elementary school students as you would for higher education, and think about where are our students and how can they take a role in this orchestration process. And so thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jennifer. This is really good. And I know you stayed at a high level, but I'm wondering when these systems are going to start to, as you said, they're very close to predicting what a student will do. Will they then give this information to a teacher? You know, we predict these 3 will be finished. We predict these 3 really need remedial help. You know, and when is that? Do you see that that's might begin?
And so with these systems, that information is already being provided to the instructors. And so we have seen these being successfully used in these different settings. So as I said, Frog being able to provide this prediction has been used across 3 or 4 higher education, large lecture classes. Lumalo was actually used in the classroom with teachers working with these ITSs. And so all of these examples that I gave have been used in real classroom settings by teachers using them to help their students.
Okay, great. Great, really, that's terrific.